I would like to introduce my next guest, Deb Beroset. Deb, she is the founder of Moxie, and you've actually just reached 10 years running your business now. You have a philosophy you described as identity level coaching, and imaginal intelligence is one of your kind of hot topics right now. Do you think you could maybe start by introducing your business and these terms, these concepts that you're using?
Sure, absolutely. Thanks. It's great to be here chatting with you about this, Monty. Thanks. So my business is called It's Time for Moxie, and it's basically a personal development ecosystem that is, as you said, about to hit the 10-year mark, which is exciting. And so in my business, I've been primarily working with women. And as you already said, it's identity-based coaching, which means it's not coaching based on or aimed at, having you be more productive or just dealing with your mindset. It's really about the stories that we tell others and ourselves about who we are. Who am I for myself, and what is life from my perspective? And when you change, or not when you change, when a person shifts their story about who they are, that affects everything, everything. And so that is definitely the area that I focus on in my work. Now, as far as the imaginal intelligence is concerned, my work is leaning into the notion that if a person, first we have an insight, and then the idea is that we make some move that is prompted by that insight, right? And so an insight all on its own is not worth that much. So what is it that gets a person moving in a new direction? Well, I have found, Monty, over the years that if a person cannot literally see it in their mind's eye, they are very unlikely to make a real move towards something that they cannot imagine themselves doing, being, right? And so, of all the animals on the earth, this animal and that animal, we didn't get the flight of the birds, but we did get meaning making ability. That is the thing that sets us apart. And we also have the ability to believe the meaning that we make. So we want to set about that very consciously. When I envision a future with sensory detail, with, not just a concept, but imagining, all right, it's not just, oh, I have love in my life. What does it feel like? I'm sitting at a table, I'm with friends, and so forth. When you have like a movie scene in your mind of the desired future, your body almost doesn't know the difference. This is why professional athletes use visualization so powerfully, is because your brain does not really distinguish that much between the imagined reality and the quote actual reality happening. And so what I have found with clients over the years and myself is that when we have a vision, not just a concept, but a vision, and we can see ourselves in the desired future, we are much, much more likely to naturally move in that direction. And I like to lean on Rumi quite a bit in terms of we want to move in the direction of what makes us come alive, right? So that's what I do. I get people moving in the direction of what makes them come alive.
Okay, yeah. I mean, so when you're taking these ideologies, these thoughts, like when you're speaking with a CEO, how do you transmit this to them? Because I mean, I think that this is something we can all kind of relate to. What you're saying resonated with me, and I'm sure it will resonate a lot with the viewership. Because I mean, when you're in a good state, and you have everything going well for you. You know, you're confident and you believe in yourself, and then that confidence and everything that surrounds it, you know, perpetuates you in your success. But if you kind of go on a bad streak, you know, maybe you start getting a bit down on yourself, and then that negative identity in yourself, you know, of yourself, then kind of is what stops you from being able to break out of it, you know? It's reframing that mindset. So when you're implementing this, like what techniques do you use to break a CEO out of a downward spiral? Like how do you bring them back into that position of power?
Well, the first thing that needs to happen is a sense of safety in terms of the field, in terms of the relationship. I doubt that you've probably felt free to share your vulnerabilities with someone that you didn't feel safe with, right?
I'm surprisingly open.
Well, you're closer to the more open end of the bell curve than your average bear, I'm going to guess, right? But
Probably 100% actually.
okay, that's what I sense. And so you have a bit of a leg up there, but for people who are in leadership positions, who have gotten into those leadership positions um, by managing a lot of things, including others' perceptions of them, it can feel a little scary to open up the chinks in the armor, if you will, right? But so a sense of acceptance and safety is really really essential. The client needs to know, and I don't even think of the person as client. I think of them as, here is a human being I am championing, and they need to know that this is a safe space. So I won't get into how that happens, but that's number one. The second thing is to have the person resourced, to have them in a resource state. So, coaching is not about just, oh, well, what's wrong? Let's take the wrench and get in there and fix it, right? I mean, a very big part of coaching is to also have the person present to who they are as a human being, right? So a lot of times it'll be a matter of, doing kind of an overview of what have they accomplished, not just in terms of traditional accomplishment, but what have they accomplished in terms of their life, their family, what's important to them, like who are they really at this juncture, right? That's the real big thing, because we're ever evolving, right? Like who you are today is not the man you were 5 years ago, right?
Yeah.
Let alone 10 years ago. And so we need to kind of update the operating system and see, well, my goodness, what is really important to me now? Like, no kidding. And so having the person present to the amazing things they've already done and who they already are, and that's a part of my job, is to reflect that back, to have that present. And then we look at, all right, well, where are we feeling a little constrained? And the thing about the constraints is that they mostly have nothing to do with the present. The constraints are almost always tentacles of something in the past that's kind of reaching forward, right? And so when we get to the root of what are some of the things that my younger self compensated for or was dealing with, that I had to move in a different way, or I had to manage myself in a different way, to survive and thrive in these situations, we don't leave those things behind. So the beauty of it is, at this point in life, especially when we have a partner in the inquiry, right? Because we are not meant to read the labels on our own bottles. We just are not, myself included. I was just at incredible retreat at the Modern Elder Academy out in Santa Fe, led by Chip Conley, founded by Chip Conley. And I will tell you, it had been a long time since I had myself been a participant in something and not leading it. And it was extraordinary because there were people to reflect back both what I was expressing, but also, what they see. And it is only in that community kind of inquiry, whether it's in a group or with a coach or, a trusted advisor, a friend, that we are able to really, truly tap into our gifts and our humanity.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, it kind of goes back to what you started with, which is, you said to be with someone and like to coach someone, you need to make them feel safe first. So if they have that partner, then they're always in that sense of safety, right? And I mean, when you're able to actually feel safe and then be able to speak openly about your problems, like you can constantly be kind of unburdening yourself of these little weights that you carry, right? It's like you have
Right.
someone to help you kind of deal with the everyday stresses of life.
Well,
Um,
yeah, it makes such a huge difference not to carry these things alone, even if you don't need any actual advice or direction from another human being. Just being really seen and
yeah.
heard with what you're dealing with, it allows emotions to be in motion, right? It allows those things to move through us and get expressed, rather than feeling kind of stuck, if that makes
Mhm.
sense.
No, I mean, I get it because I feel the same way. Sometimes I'm just like, I don't need like anyone to tell me that I'm right or anything, but I just want someone to hear me to like I need to get this off my chest. And then it's like, okay, good. The weight's
Yeah,
gone. Like I can move on. Like I've been
right.
heard. Like
It
I said
makes
my
a difference.
piece. Don't need to discuss it or anything, but just, I mean, I think that's a very human thing.
It is. And there's something amazing about, people bring different qualities of listening, right? And when you're with someone who brings a particular kind of listening, a listening that is not built on a desire to respond with the right thing, but really more the desire to really get you. Like, I really want to get you. I want to get what's going on with you. I want to get what your experience is. I don't want to add to it. I just want to get it. And unfortunately, being listened to that way seems to be kind of a luxury in this society.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I think that to have someone that is actually truly involved and is genuinely interested is a very rare thing. And when you come across the people that do actually care and listen, and they're not just like doing it to please you for a second, like you notice it right away. Like you feel that energy, and then you're actually drawn to them as well. You know?
isn't that true? It's so true. We tend to forget that our bodies, we're not just brains on wheels, right? Like our entire body, science tells us, has all kinds of ways of sensing and knowing things. Mirror neurons and all kinds of things going on. And so what you said is absolutely true. Our bodies literally feel other people's energy. I don't know
Mhm.
what science says about that on Zoom. That would be an interesting thing to look into. But
Yeah.
regardless of what science says about that, I will say this. That ever since the pandemic, when I pivoted everything to Zoom, as did everybody else in the world who could, what I found is that we can have profound connections that don't have to have us in the same room. And so if you pay attention, if you really tune in, you can feel people's energy on Zoom just as you can. It's not the same as being in person, but I have been in groups. I do a lot of group programs
Hmm.
on Zoom where there are profound relationships and a sense of relatedness that arises. It's quite amazing what the human spirit is capable of.
Hmm. No, 100%. I mean, just because you're not physically present, it does not mean that you're not connected, right? I mean, just look at what science is discovering about quantums now. It's like,
Exactly.
something can exist in two spaces at the same time. So just because you're not in the same space doesn't mean you're not connected. I mean, I don't want to start throwing out all of my
Bring
spiritual
it.
mumbo jumbo,
Bring it
but
on.
you know, I mean, actually, before I guess I can throw it out, but before I get into that, I just wanted to make one comment on, what you were kind of saying about. I don't know what science has to say about it. Um, well, you know what? Just look at medication, for example, and then what's the most effective medication basically across the board? It's a placebo, you know?
Oh, right.
It's like every time they're testing a new drug, it's like the placebo gets just as good of a result or a better result than the actual drug. So, I mean, the power of your mind is so intense, and so it's so incredible that you're able to actually manifest physical ailments being healed just because you believe that it's going to happen.
Yes, it's quite extraordinary, really. Yeah,
But I mean,
exactly.
I think the metaphysical is something that maybe some people would turn their nose up to, but there's got to be something there, right?
Well, I think it would be a little arrogant of us to assume that we know everything there is to know,
Hmm.
wouldn't it?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. So, we have these extraordinary abilities, and it's up to each of us to choose, to what extent do I want to cultivate this? And for those people who do feel the pull of a little something more, I mean, that's pretty much who I work with is accomplished individuals. They're not in survival. From the outside, life looks pretty great. And it might be pretty great, right? It often is pretty great. And yet, these are individuals who feel like, I just like it just feels like there's a little something missing, or I they have this pull toward a somewhat more existential kind of question, not just how can I succeed.
Yeah, yeah. That's one of those overarching issues, though, in our society, right? Because we kind of lost our spiritual foundation in the Western world. Like we used to be, pagan and then Christian, and we've kind of thrown Christendom out the door for the religion of science. But I mean, that doesn't fill us with any sort of meaning, you know? And so there's like obviously been a movement since, the 70s or even starting in the 50s to kind of refine spirituality in a different way, incorporating, more Eastern theology. And, that's something I was kind of like surprised about that I've discovered over these last years is, I mean, not that like how many people are doing it, but sometimes I would almost think that in like the corporate world or corporate America, it wouldn't be like necessarily a niche of society that would match with that. Surprisingly, a lot of people are actually, either very heavily spiritual in one way or another or explorative, and I think it's one of those things, especially in such a high stress environment like the corporate world, that you need to find that balance more than, other places even.
Well, I think it's pretty universal, actually.
Yeah.
I fully agree. And, we are, you know, my foundational course was called the Soul Care Masterclass. And it's so interesting, Monty, because one of the things I'll ask as we sort of ease our way into the warm bath that is that program, right, is, well, what is it that your heart desires? And I am I am saddened by the the majority of people, when I ask that question, they don't know. They just don't know. And it actually takes something to say, you know what, I don't know. And I'm like, good. I'm never surprised when they say that because, like I said, it's the majority who say that, and so we go from there. So, you know, there's a cultivation of a certain kind of curiosity that wants to happen, and less of a white knuckle grip on finding the right answers, and more of an embracing of the inquiry of, as Rilke would say, living into the questions. And that can sound a little bit like, top of the mountain kind of thinking, but I promise you, it translates into regular life very well, right? Very well. So, let's say, since we're talking about work situations, let's say you have a really difficult interaction with somebody, just went totally sideways, did not go the way you wanted, right? And there's a tendency to like review, what did I say? What did I do? La 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 la, right? Well, it can be something as simple as, well, you've been looking from this side of the cup, let's turn it around. And I wonder what he's dealing with. I wonder what's underneath how that went, right? Like even something as simple as that, like allowing your mind to wander into unknown territory. It sounds pretty simple, but it's not something that people do automatically. And when we embrace the fact that there are infinite perspectives on the very same thing, and perhaps we do not have the only correct perspective, right?
Yeah.
And maybe our perspective isn't even correct, right? So there's something very beautiful that happens when people let go of right and wrong and come from wonder and curiosity, even in situations that, you might say, oh, that's great if you're talking about something that's not got high stakes. But when there's high stakes, wonder and curiosity, what the hell, right? But no, I led, at Hallmark, I led their internal think tank, a beautiful space called the Collaboratory. And, the success of those innovation projects was was based on a hearty sense of not knowing,
Right.
embracing not knowing, and exploring. I wonder, what if we did this? What if we did that? So, that was a, overt innovation mission, right? And not everybody's touting themselves as an innovation person. And yet, I would say that, we want to bring innovation to our lives, right? We are our own innovators. We are coming up with our own iterations of this product called Deb, this product, this phenomenon that is Monty, right?
Hmm.
I think of it as, we're ever evolving creatures. We're not static. We're ever evolving, and I think of it as like this upward, ever widening spiral that we're on, right? So that maybe down here when I'm a little baby soul and I'm just kind of figuring things out, I deal with some childhood stuff and oh yeah, that had some impact on me. But at this point in my life, where my spiral's a little higher, a little wider, right? So I come around to that childhood stuff up here and I see things I never saw before about ways in which I made things up or was told things or experienced things. And I didn't leave that behind. I created stories about who I am and about life that impact me all the way up until now, until I gently release my grip on them and see, it's time to let that go like the leaf on a tree. Boop, right? And move on.
And yeah, I mean, that resonated with me a lot. Like, especially the part about just having empathy, looking at the situation from the other side, because I think it's something that we all need to remember to do, even if it's something that you do practice from time to time. It's so easy to forget, and just to, when you're worked up and you're full of emotion, you know, and you're so sure that you've been wronged a lot of the time when you're getting so upset, to take that moment to take a breath and actually remember, hey, like there's been times where I've been having a really bad day, and sometimes you don't care. You're like everything's going wrong. You're like, well, screw it. Like I'm not apologizing to everyone because they don't to anyone because they don't know what I'm going through, and just understanding that maybe if something, if someone even did wrong you, like that doesn't necessarily represent who they are. They just might be going through a struggle, or maybe your perspectives on a situation. If you're in a conflict with someone, like you both are thinking that you're in the right, and who's to say who is in the right and who is wrong. Like everyone has a different experience of life. I can be in a situation where, it wouldn't bother me at all, but a friend would be super upset by it. Or like you could do something like that to someone else isn't, and it isn't acceptable, or they think is frustrating. But to you, it's like, oh no, like if someone else was doing that around me, I wouldn't care, because we just don't experience life the same way. So always having the second, to just like take a step back and try and put yourself in the other person's shoes and have that empathy, I think is one of those like things in life that, I mean, can make a difference between you having a bad day and just saying like, okay, that's just the way the cookie crumbles.
Oh, yes. You know, I think of it like every little moment's like the bead on a necklace, right?
Hmm.
And so what you just described is really beautiful. We do have agency, we do have choice in how we respond to whatever's happening, right?
Yeah.
And so let's say there's someone upset with you. And like you said, you can, or disagreeing or whatever it is, you can, it's really easy to let that hijack your being, your peace, your creativity, your day, maybe your week. I mean, let's face it, sometimes we like to chew on this stuff for a long
Oh,
time.
yeah.
Like, it's not like it goes away the next day. It's like, oh, that's that person who said the blah blah
Yeah.
to me, like, right? And it carries on. And so, one of the things that I have myself been practicing, I'm not perfect, but it's a great thing to practice, is like not getting your knickers in a twist. I'm telling you, the skill of being unbothered is wildly undersold. To be able to cultivate like a, a peaceful, still water in yourself, right? When it feels like somebody's shaking things up, gold. It's everything. I've had many careers packed into one life, it feels like. And during one of those, I was in charge of public relations for a large company for 12 years. And, there's a lot of really fun stuff, but there's also a lot of really stressful stuff. And, quote, emergencies, and, the ability to reach a really calm center in the midst of whatever is happening is worth its weight in gold. It really is. And I've studied people who, you know, I know that people that when they walk in the room, Monty, you just you just feel your blood pressure go down a little bit, right? Like it's like they bring with them this little bubble of, yeah, there's stuff going on in me, in the company, in the world for sure, right? There's stuff going on, and yet um, I am tending to the bubble of energy that is me, that I'm walking around, right?
I mean, like you were saying before, like we have an energy and we connect to people, and even without getting metaphysical about it, I think you can even just explain it as, I mean, you feed off. Well, I mean, I guess it is metaphysical, but you feed off the energy of someone else around you. If someone maintains a calm energy, tranquility, like I mean, no matter what energy you have, it's infectious, right? And I mean, I know that what you're talking about isn't just a thing that is originating organically, but it's actually something that you can practice. I mean, and there's been times in my life where, people have been freaking out, and you just can kind of deliberately go in with very slow way of talking and try to bring the energy level back down. And maybe it takes like 15 minutes or something, but people kind of start to feel the vibration. And the same as when, someone comes at you unexpectedly with a super high energy and you're kind of caught off guard. It's easy to like rise to that energy. And then all of a sudden you're like, almost yelling at each other. Not actually, but your voices are raised, you're animated, and you're like you're just caught off guard, and all of a sudden, boom, you're brought up to this other energy level.
Mm, that's so wise. That's so wise what you're saying. In fact, it reminds me of there's a phenomenon called emotional contagion, and there years ago I read a really wonderful Harvard Business Review article about some research that they did, and they found that the emotional state of a leader in an organization spreads through that organization. And you think, okay, that makes sense. But in addition to this isn't just like I'm feeling a little 10% more, freed up, confident, and happy around this leader. No, or not, right? They found that it affected the bottom line in a way that they could quantify. So when you think about that, you got your leader coming in some sour mood, right? Feeling unsupported, maybe themselves, feeling like they got to look over their shoulder, whatever's going on. Nobody gets what I'm dealing with. Like all understandable, valid thoughts and feelings, right? Let's not forget that. Leaders are dealing with a lot. Well, do not think that you are masking that and all is well, because we are sophisticated animals. We feel it. Even if you don't open your mouth, that it gets on other people and they don't even maybe know it, and that spreads. And that will take a company down. That will take a corporate culture down. Actually, that will even significantly impact like a startup with a really small team. I've seen it happen in those situations as well. Sometimes even more powerfully because there's not as much buffer, right? It's like you got this small team working intensely on something, and if somebody on your team is out of whack, that's not an isolated problem. That is part of your ecosystem that needs tending to.
I mean, from like a common sense perspective, to me it makes complete sense because you know if your boss, the CEO, say you're under him, you know, he's giving you a hard time, he's hammering you, he's stressed, shit rolls downhill, you know? It just goes to the next person,
Can't
which
argue
goes to
with
the next
gravity.
person, which goes to the next person.
Yeah, well, I shouldn't say you can't argue with gravity. You can. People do argue with gravity, but you
Yeah.
will not win. You
Yeah,
will not
yeah.
win, right? So yeah, yeah. I just attended a really profound event that where Amy Elizabeth Fox and Thomas Hubel were speaking about leading in a time of chaos, And one of the main points of what they were speaking about is the necessity of that tending to our interior life. You know, we've been brought up to direct all our attention to the external and have pretty much ignored the interior and the importance of that in the workplace. And yet, our interior life is such a huge, strong determinant of what actually happens for ourselves and in the world that it's actually a huge opportunity because there's a whole garden to be tended and cultivated that makes a huge difference in terms of people's effectiveness, in terms of their verve, in terms of their, that vitality and life force that is where creation comes from, right?
There's another person that I was talking with recently who was using the term space. So, it's like that energy that you carry that draws people to you, that when you walk in a room, you gravitate towards that person, I mean, I think charisma is probably the best way to define it, but I mean, unlocking that and like through, your program and understanding your worth and your value, and then being able to cultivate that in your garden, that
I
is
think a lot of what you're
powerful.
referring to, yeah, I'm sorry, I talked over you there. I got so excited about what you were saying, but it's 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 presence. Presence, I think, is what you're pointing to, and it's so good. Uh, and a leader or anyone, you can't bring that quality of presence when there's too much between you and what's out here,
Yeah,
right? So the
100%.
more, Michelangelo is said to have said, I don't know, I wasn't there, that when he was about the David, this incredible work of art, that, oh, I was just removing all the marble that wasn't David. So everything that wasn't David, I chipped away, polished away, right? And so whether that's true or not that he said that, I love the story because that is really what I and other practitioners like myself are doing is being a partner and a champion with an individual who's looking with fresh eyes at oh, that thing that I had going on about I'm not enough or I'm all alone, those are not innate. Those were additives. Like those got wired in at junctures where they were needed in the time, but those are not really true to who I am. And so I can now see, yes, at the time that was valuable and it has served me in the ways it served me. And now I'm ready to let that go because that's not really me. And I'll tell you, may I put in a little plug for getting past a certain age here because I'm 66 and I feel like I'm just warming up. I'll be honest. Okay. And there is something about getting to midlife, which Chip Conley, by the way, says because of longevity and all of this, now he said somewhere like between was it 40, 45, and 70 is now considered still midlife. It's expanded, right? And when you think about how much life there is still to live and to choose what you're doing with it, you think, oh, well, let's tune up the Lamborghini a little bit here, right? Like I got a classic car. Let's figure out how to make it run really well. Let's take off all the things that aren't needed anymore, and let's just see what she'll do.
Yeah,
I
time to
think
put in a turbo.
that's right. It's time to put it in turbo, right? So, yeah, so I have a little thing I like to say to some of the women in my programs. It's like, I want you to consider that you are a Lamborghini parked in the garage, okay? And let's take her out and see what she'll do.
Hmm.
Yeah. And so it becomes, context is everything, right? So it's not about, oh, let's fix some of this shit that's wrong with you. No.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to tell you how to do that. This is about, are you kidding? Do you see who you are? Like, look at the miracle that you are. I mean, look at you, Monty. Look at you doing this podcast, with that beautiful artwork behind you and reaching out to people and saying, I want to have a conversation that makes a difference. I mean, that's an extraordinary thing to do.
Thank you. You
You're
you can
welcome.
you can feel that you have the experience empowering people. I feel like compliments come very naturally to you, and I appreciate that. You're
Well,
a
you're
beautiful
welcome.
woman and a beautiful guest to have on the podcast.
You're welcome. And I'll tell you where it comes from is I don't think of them as compliments, although I suppose they are. Here's how I think of it. I think of it as I see and I reflect back what I see. And I try to do that with as little hesitation or overthinking as possible. We all need that. We need that.
Yeah. I mean, I hate to throw out a movie quote, but
Go
uh,
for it.
have you seen Dune? Fear is the mind killer. It's
Uh,
like, I would like to say analysis paralysis, I think, a bit more in the business world, but when you overthink things, it throws off your mojo, And actually, that's also to loop back a little bit. I really liked those analogies you used of, chipping away the marble, finding that person, like the core of their being underneath in the Lamborghini. I would actually really love to talk about that and, you explain to our viewers a little bit, what that process looks like. What is your process for chipping away the marble and, bringing that person to their true self?
oh, such a great, rich question. Um, a lot of it's pattern recognition. Um, it's noticing when things come up. I mean, we all know the difference between, we are cooking with gas, we feel unrestrained, maybe you're in a project, you're really into it, you're in your flow, things are great, right? And then we all know what it feels like when you're not. So it's it's looking at the patterns in your life. Where are the places where I expand and where are the places where I contract? So by places, I mean situations, what kind of people, what kind of environments. And it's like you become your own Columbo, or, ideally, you're doing it in partnership because it's much easier to see from the outside than it is from the inside, as we all know, right? So it's not that it can't be done from the inside, but it's much more challenging. AI can be an assist with that. I'll get to that in a second. But so we look for patterns. Where is it that you feel most expansive, powerful, creative, badass? Like, oh, yeah, I am in my element, right? So you want to look at those and then look at where you don't. And, we've all got what we tend to categorize as successes and failures in our lives. Although I would argue that it's not quite that simple.
Yeah.
but but if you look back and you see, oh, what are some of the tendencies? So, a tendency that I had for a long, long time was I was a loner. Like I did things alone, very independent, didn't want to rely on other people, didn't want to ask other people for help. And, that comes from childhood stuff. And, these things can can be gifts and serve us. But, I was a freelance writer in my late 20s, early. I'd been a freelance writer for many years, writing for national publications and, successful in a lot of ways, right? From the outside. But what I knew was that, I'm tired of playing by myself all the time. Like this is not fun. And I just had a yearning for a different kind of experience. It was the first time I ever hired a coach, by the way, because I thought I have no idea what kind of a job I'd be even looking for right now. I just know I'm tired of doing this. And she helped me look to see what was the kind of experience that I wanted. And I said, "Oh, I want to work with other creatives at the top of their game." I was missing that sense of community and the what can only happen when people come together, right? So back to your question of, how do you see some of these patterns, is I saw that I had almost relegated myself to playing alone, and that I didn't need to. And it was out of that I started looking around online and discovered Hallmark's commitment to creative renewal. Anyway, I plunged myself into the lengthy application and interviewing process, and wound up, a wonderful woman named Dorothy Colgan saw something in me that I didn't see. And she said, "I don't want to hire you as a writer. I want to hire you to run this department." And
Incredible.
it was incredible. I owe her so much. In fact, I'm going to reach out to her today, just being reminded about this, because there are those people in our lives, whether it's a coach or an employer, a colleague, a friend, a family member, who are, what's the word, perspicacious, like they see something in you. And not only do they see something, but they're willing to put their chips on it, like that. She took I'm going to say a calculated risk. It was the first time someone had been hired from the outside of this monolithic, privately owned $4 billion company to run one of the studios. So if it hadn't worked, I'm sure she would have heard about it. Right?
Should have got the axe.
I don't think she would have gotten the axe, but it was not. It was something that was not done, and she decided to do it, right? So, that's what happens, is there's a fellow human being who sees something in you and cultivates that and shines light on it and says, "Oh, I'm absolutely certain you can do this. I see something in you." And that's like gas in the tank, right? To have somebody express that kind of belief in you, what happens is it shifts the story that we have about ourselves. And so rather than me sitting over here thinking, "Wow, I think I play well with others, but I don't have any evidence for that." And instead of me thinking, "Wow, I don't have much managerial experience of other people. I've been a freelance writer for the last several years." You live into the story that someone else hands you in their reflection. So I lived into, okay, Dorothy Colgan's a really smart woman, and she's got experience in this. And if she says I can do this, then I say I can do this, and off we go. And that's a microcosm, right? But that's how it happens. Is we don't tend to just drop these stories about ourselves of our own accord on an average Tuesday. We tend to drop these stories when they're replaced by a new empowering story, right? So my new story became, I am someone who helps unleash creativity in others. And that is how I found one of my core strengths, which is I'm an activator. I'm a creative catalyst, and around me, people can thrive and try things they haven't tried before, and bring out their brilliant selves that are willing to take risks in unknown territory. So I could only get to that in interactions, in community, in being reflected by someone who I gave my trust.
Right. Yeah, not only that, but like by her putting her trust into you, it also forms like accountability, right? It's like, okay, this person is taking a risk on me, like I don't want to let them down. And like that even pushes you to drive yourself for their sake besides your own. So you have this like, double motivation engine going on.
That's so true. That's so true. It's so true. And here's the beautiful piece of it. Um, I'm trained in neuroscience-informed coaching, trained by a wonderful woman named Ann Betts, Be Above Leadership. And one of the things I learned from her and her company is that there are actual frequencies that we operate at. This is not a woo thing. This is a science thing as well,
Yeah.
right? And so the lower frequencies that goes from resignation, fear, anger, right? And those emotions all have their place, right? They're part of the human experience and they all inform us as well. But we could kind of lump those lower frequencies together and call those fear. And then the first frequency above the line, so to speak, is courage. And then it goes up into engagement, innovation, and synchronicity. So you can kind of call those frequencies all love. So if I were to boil it down into something that somebody can take and use from today on, and that is to look at where am I coming from when where are my thoughts coming from, sourced? What I'm about to say, where is that coming from? Is it coming from fear or is it coming from love? And I just yesterday heard Amy Elizabeth Fox say, we need to bring love into the workplace. And, amen, sister, because, we want and need love in the workplace. We need love for our fellow creators. We're all up to something, right? And so we want to be bringing love to what we're actually engaged with because life's more fun that way. We want to bring love to the relationships, so that we can help each other thrive.
If somebody is operating off the vibrations or the wavelengths of fear, like how would you help them transition into love? Do you have like a system or advice or like what does that look like when you're approaching someone who's operating on the lower wavelengths?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, we need balm for the soul. You know, nobody's in fear because they want to be. Nobody. And so the first thing is to really witness it, to witness that emotion in the other, which enables them to witness it in themselves and to have compassion for it, right? Fear is not something we want to swat away and lock the door and keep it outside, right? Fear is something that we want to say, oh, I want to bear witness to what my experience is. And so, there's like an inner wise one that lives in each of us. And there's a beautiful way of invoking that inner wise one who kind of goes back for the scared little girl and says, "Hey, I hear you, honey. You're a little afraid right now. Tell me about that." What I'm describing to you right now is a technique I use with myself and I share with clients, right? Like you can actually talk out loud to yourself.
And because you were saying how powerful visualization is and using this, so this is one of the practices that you use, one of the
Absolutely.
visualization practices. Okay.
Absolutely. And so, in a conversation with someone, I invite them to just share about what that experience is, because when we can bring some tenderness and care to our own experience, then that makes available a different experience. But only after it's witnessed and acknowledged and validated, right? We're not wrong to feel afraid. We just feel afraid, right? And so when we recognize that, and when someone else says, "I get it. You're scared right now." There's something that makes available, right? When that's been witnessed, that we can say, "Okay, so there's some fear. Let's look and see what else is happening." Right?
You said this a little bit before, but I kind of wanted to go and touch back on it. Like you were speaking about how, well, you mentioned how you studied neuroscience, you're trained in neuroscience. I would love to hear the evolution of that. How you went from neuroscience to being a freelance writer, or like a journalist, more or less, right? And then, and then that transferring into your coaching and kind of how the knowledge you gained from each step transferred on to the next process and how you're invoking those tools in each process.
That's such a good question. You're such a good question asker, Monty. Um, uh, well, I actually started out as a music major. I'll go way back, right? Playing French horn. I was going to be a professional French horn player in an orchestra. And about a year in to study at the University of Michigan, I realized, as much as I love and adore music and the soulful sound of a French horn, I am not meant for that life. So here's what happened. I started actually imagining myself in the life, like, oh, you'll be working in a if you're lucky, you'll get a seat in an orchestra, right? And you're going to be spending all your evenings and weekends working, performing at concerts. By the way, they also tell you what to wear, so I don't get to be very expressive with that,
Yeah.
but that wasn't the big thing. But there's like you want to really think about what is my life going to be like, and I realized, oh, you have pretty much zero mobility, because if you get a gig with the University of Chicago, or the Chicago Symphony, you don't just take off and move somewhere else easily, right? So I started thinking about all that, and I realized that is not the life that turns me on. And so I decided, oh, great. Well, obviously, I need to go into writing and journalism, because that was my other main love. So, as a journalist, well, I should mention, my uncle offered me a job in Dubai when I was in that liminal in between space, not quite in journalism school. Now I'm not in music school. And I'm kind of treading water at a community college, right? And so he offers me a job as a secretary in his company in Dubai. And this was back in 1980, so a bit ago. And Dubai was not the Dubai it is today. And so I said yes. So I went over there. And that's a story best told over a glass of wine, honestly. But I will say that I wound up getting my first journalism job over there. I only worked for him for 3 months, and he moved his company to Riyadh. So I stayed as a 20-year-old and got a job with the Gulf News, by saying, send me out on any story. I know I've only got high school journalism in my background. I was, an editor of a high school paper. Woohoo, right? Because the editor's saying, like, why on earth would I hire you? I'm just curious to what you'd say to that. And I'd say, look, send me out on an assignment, anything you like. And if you like what I do, great. And if you don't, I won't bother you again. So he sent me to cover an international bridge tournament when I knew nothing about bridge. So, this is again like the cup here, the cup here. I'm like, wow, I'm so screwed. I know nothing about bridge, and the whole job is hinging on this, right? But I turn it around. I go, oh, you know what? I'm going to write a story about what is it like to attend an international bridge tournament when you don't have one tiny little bit of knowledge about bridge. What is that like? And so that's how I wrote the story, and he loved it, and I got hired. And so you know, how did all this contribute? From a very early age, Monty, I learned that anything in life that was of any interest, use, value, it involves risking something. It involves saying you want it. It involves admitting to yourself you want it. It involves being willing to look foolish. It involves, being willing to fail, right? Like, this might not turn out the way I want it to turn out, but I'm going to do it anyway. And I'm
Yeah.
telling you, that right there, that little piece of intel about being a human being, that little piece is informs everything that I do,
Mhm.
because I have been told, regardless of what position I'm in, that part of what I bring to the potluck dinner of life, my little favorite dish, is the courage to go after something. So that's that piece. Now, as a journalist, so then I became a journal. After 3 years, I come back to the United States. I decided, okay, I'm going to actually go get that journalism degree now that I've been a working journalist, and accompanied the Dubai polo team in India and written about it. I mean, incredible opportunities that would never have happened if I hadn't been crazy enough, foolish enough to go after it. So, what I specialized in eventually as a journalist was doing personality profiles of non celebrities. In fact, Ladies Home Journal created a series, How America Lives. And they would send me, I was embedded with a fundamentalist Christian family in Montana who was doing homeschooling, and I wrote about that. They sent me out to Seattle to hang out with a shock jock, a talk radio guy, and write about that. I mean, it was really kind of unusual for the women's magazines in
Yeah.
those days, right?
Sounds
You
fun.
know, yeah, oh, it was incredible. So what did that do for me? I'd say it was a two-way street. Part of what had me gravitate toward that sort of thing and had me to be quite good at it is I I am very attentive to people. Not all the time, but when I want to be, like, I pick up on details. I'm able to read things. I'm informed by what they call literary journalism, which is where you look for the telling detail. It's not just about writing the headlines. It's about how how can I write about Monty and the experience of being with Monty in a way that someone who never has will get a real sense of that experience,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So you pay attention to things that people don't normally pay attention to. What do they love? When do they perk up? When do their eyes light up? What are their little habits? What kind of art? Like that art behind you that tells me a lot, right? What kind of art do they choose to have in their environment? How do they put themselves together to present themselves as their own little work of art in the world? So, you know, I look back now and I see that for years I was refining that ability to see deeply into someone and what really matters to them and what they're afraid of and how they love the world, right? And and amplify that in a way that it could be shared with millions of people. And so, as a coach now, to fast forward, that one piece of my career, which was several careers ago, has absolutely helped me refine my ability to pay attention with a different kind of quality of attention. It's an attention that is less about figuring out what's right and wrong. In fact, it's not at all about that. I'm not bringing a binary attention to this to figure out who's the good guy, who's the bad guy. I'm bringing a quality of attention that is more the kind of attention a Michelangelo might bring to the marble, which is what is the soul that's wanting to emerge? You know, what what is this masterpiece of a human being that is looking to set itself free?
Right. And yeah, I love that. And I was just like, as you're explaining everything, I'm like, oh, I'm seeing the dots connect. And
Are you?
yeah,
Are you?
yeah,
I
yeah,
love that.
yeah.
What are the dots? What are the dots
I mean,
connecting?
just learning to examine people, right? And being able to read into them and be able to tell the story about them so that you're able to transfer, instead of, writing a story on, one of these disc jockeys or something that you did back in the day. Now you can write that story about, the CEO that you're empowering, and you can help them to change their mindset so they can see that story as well,
Yes.
having them truly like understand their own essence.
Well, it all comes from that. When a human being gets a sense of their own wondrous makeup, right? Um, and here's the other thing that I think is so important, and that is, people are hungry for a sense of purpose, and they tend to think of their purpose with a capital P as almost like a job description they haven't quite discovered yet, right? Um, I tend to, when I work with people on that, and I do a lot, uh, first of all, I think we all need to lighten up a little bit about it because we can get so kind of serious and white knuckle that nothing comes. So I speak about it in terms of, what? It's your cosmic job description, right? The HR department said, oh, like I'm curious, Monty, may I put you on the spot?
Sure,
Just a
go
tiny
ahead.
bit. Okay.
It's only fair.
Okay. So I'm curious when you look, like, there are certain qualities that Monty brings to life. Like,
Yeah.
what's your dish? What is that thing that, like, regardless of what you're working on, your project, your company, like, you reliably bring this to the party of life? What would you say it might be?
I mean, for me, I think it's pretty easy to say. I just try to be as positive as possible, try to be as inclusive as possible. Like, I want to just kind of bring joy to the world as much as I can because, by spreading that, then you're able to live in it and to experience it yourself, And yeah, I mean, from my own life experiences, things weren't always sunshine and roses. So because, maybe I had a hard time in the past, then I just wanted to lock in that mindset of like always trying to look at the bright side. And, you also talked about letting things just roll off, when things are going wrong, just disregard it. Just don't worry about it. Don't stress yourself. That's another one of like the philosophies that I try to practice as well, albeit not always successfully, but to the best
Exactly.
of my ability.
Exactly. Hey, nobody does that perfectly,
Yeah,
including myself for
yeah,
sure. you know, but equanimity, I believe, would be the word. Right? Just yeah, cultivating. It's not that you don't care, right? It's not that you don't care about things, but you manage to be relatively
yeah,
unbothered.
yeah. Well, the thing is, most things don't actually warrant being upset about. It's like when you zoom out and you look at the big picture, it's like our lives are great. Like we're living in the top 1% bubble of the entire globe, Like basically anything that frustrates us is relatively not a problem for most people experiencing life. We're super blessed and I mean, I've I've been lucky enough to, start traveling at a young age and start framing my mindset, based on a kind of more global perspective, going to countries where there's much higher levels of poverty and, people don't have the same opportunities in terms of education or healthcare. And, where there's been wars ravaging their country, and when you start experiencing that world and you come back home, you're back in America, you're back in Canada, all of a sudden, even if you're having the worst day ever, it's not that bad. Like
Yes.
just framing that perspective and saying, you know what, like, what am I getting upset about? Well, I didn't get this thing that I want right now. Well, I have a roof over my head. I've got clothing. I've got a job. Like, my health is good. If it does go bad, I have health care. Like, you
Yeah.
know, we
Yeah.
have the staples. You have your family. Like,
Yeah, yeah. So, I'm gonna go out on a limb here, not really, and say, you're a possibilitarian, Monty, right? You're a possibilitarian. You're someone who first of all, you definitely have a perspective that goes beyond the individual. I mean, see, this is the thing. All you have to do is listen and pay attention. You think in terms of global. You're a global thinker. You think in terms of what are people doing on parts of the planet that I don't have visibility to right now. You're a systems thinker, right? You're a visionary. You're not afraid to go out and do new things that you've not done before, right? So when you know that about yourself, which you do, which is awesome, when you know that about yourself, then you can kind of relax a little bit. You can trust that, I could airdrop you into any number of situations and you're going to bring what Monty brings, right? When that is, if you're operating without constraint and that you can bring what it is that you're meant to bring. So, perfect example of what we've been talking about. The form that it takes can vary over a lifetime. I've been the head of PR for a company. I used to design curriculum for Skill Path seminars for a year. I've had a lot of different things that I've done. And yet, in pretty much every position that I've held or business that I've had myself, because I'm a serial entrepreneur, you know, when it goes well, it's because I am able to bring what I bring and share it. Right. And
you're the
so,
special sauce.
yeah, my own special sauce, and everybody's got their own little special sauce. And, when we put all those special sauces together, you get something pretty incredible that James Beard couldn't even approach. Right. So, so yeah, let's get all this special sauce flowing.
And I love it. Actually, like, I I would like to kind of ask you a question that we brought up earlier, because, like, I mean, the special sauce, I feel like, we have our personal one, but the technological side has changed so much recently. I know this is a bit of a divergence, but it's something that I wanted to bring up, because we also talked about it before, in terms of, I mean, you're telling me how you were using uh, AI to start analyzing some of your experiences in life, and, like, this is another way, like, another special sauce that we can add in. So I was just wondering about, are you integrating that, or are you adding any sort of twists now on to your coaching? Because I know you've been using AI in your own personal life, to do some analysis, but how is that integrating into your business now?
Oh, yeah, I'd love to share that. Well, first, I'm going to quickly share a way that people can use AI for some of that pattern recognition about themselves. It's really simple. So here's what I found is the best way to do this is, you can record into your phone, or, I use Otter AI to transcribe what I'm saying. And so here's what I recommend is don't necessarily try to quote tell the story of your life, because that's got some well-worn wagon wheel ruts in the road. We've all got the story as we've kind of put it together. What I suggest instead is that you do something where you relay various discrete scenes that you recall from your life, moments, like what happened in that moment, what was going on when you had that experience that really left a mark on you in some way. I'm not even saying a bad mark, right? But it was like a formative experience. So what I did is I spent 2 days, pretty much, it was pretty intense actually, where I just recorded this memory, this memory, this memory. And it was like skipping all over in my life. I wasn't trying to do it chronologically, but I just was sharing the felt experience and what was going on in my life, and what I thought about it at the time and what I think about it now. Just blah, 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 right? Woo, all this raw material. So I took these transcripts and I put them into Claude. And I said, I basically asked it to look for patterns. Here are some memories I've shared in narrative, and I want you to reflect back to me. What do you discern? What do you discern as strengths? What do you discern as some of the things that get in my way? Oh my God. It went through my life, Monty, and it talk about connecting dots. It connected dots that I had not connected, and I am not exactly a beginner in the personal development world, okay? I'm like, I don't know everything, but it's not like I've not looked at anything, right? And this was just last month, by the way. And I'm telling you, it led me to go back and pay some attention to the little girl who'd had some experiences and made some things up about herself, that I saw, oh, some of this impacts me to this very day, to
Wow.
this very day, that I had never seen. I've done therapy, I've done programs, I've done, you know what I'm saying? So it's like AI, it a machine cannot want, a machine does not have desire, a machine does not have a soul, and yet it does afford us the opportunity to take an aerial bird's eye view of life, and can bring pattern recognition to the material of a life and help us see things that then we get to decide what we want to do with it, right? So I do want to share that with people. And by the way, I will also say, in some cases, that kind of deep life excavation, it can bring up some things that maybe somebody doesn't want to deal with just on their own, right? So, you want to be, AI is not a therapist, AI is not a coach, all right? So you do want to be mindful of, maybe I need a little support with what I'm unearthing here. That having been said, it will also identify strengths that you did not realize were so obvious. A machine can see it. Okay. And that's a really empowering thing. So in terms of how do I use this as a coach? Oh my goodness, it's so great. So I have private clients, and ask them, is it okay for me to record this? I have their full permission, obviously, and I'm going to be using AI. By the way, I use Claude, and I do the little toggle switch where whatever you put into that is contained within the project folder. It's not going out into the ethers anywhere to train anything. So that's important as well. So anyway, I create a project folder for each client. I'm not going to get way into the weeds, but I'll give you enough of it that somebody could do it. And I put their intake information in there. I have them fill out an online reflection form 24 hours before each session. And so I go in, I take the answers to their reflection form about what's going on this week. What have they noticed? What are they dealing with? Where are they feeling constrained? What are the wins? All of this, right? There's also there's a couple quantitative things. It's not all qualitative. So I say, on a scale of 1 to 10, how confident are you feeling? And on a scale of 1 to 10, how do you feel about reaching your coaching outcomes that we've set together for you? So, oh my, you put that into the project folder with the right instructions, it creates a coaching brief for me going into the session that says, so and so mentioned X, which she mentioned 5 sessions ago. And, you might want to pay attention to blah blah. You get the idea, right?
Yeah.
So the AI's ability to retain the whole of the data, and to be able to be instructed to point out, here's a pattern you might want to look for, and you address in the call, right? So I walk in with this incredible brief in front of me and that I've studied. Then after a session, I will take the recording of that session, get the transcript, put that in, and it will tell me something else. So I also do another thing where I create what I call a living portrait of the client. This is something I've just been experimenting with in the past several months. And so the living portrait is something that it's an artifact, if you will, that I create for the client. And basically what it represents is, it's one thing to feel resourced and present to your gifts and clear about what you want in a coaching session. It's another thing to be able to access that and maintain that outside of that very particular container. So what the living portrait does is it gives the person something. It's like, you know what? I'm having kind of a bum day. I need to open up my living portrait. Oh, that living portrait reflects back to me who I really am and and I put their vision in there, right? And by the way, that vision isn't a dried up little husk of, I want to be happy and fulfilled. No, it's a living scene written as if like you're reading about it in a book or seeing it in a movie, right? So, I had a COO of a incredibly large company. She said being able to go back to the vision that came out of her. It was her vision, right? But I articulated it and I put it down so that she could have it as a something outside of herself, right? To be able to go back to that and read that in a moment of what the hell, is incredibly restorative, right? And I don't know many people who have on their hard drive something that they can go to, and it's like a wellspring of, let me remind you who you really are and why you're here.
It's almost like you're journaling for them or something, right? It's like you're.
It has some of that quality because what's contained in it is theirs. It is their most heartfelt stuff, It is their dreams. And it also documents, here are some of the things that historically have gotten in the way or been constraints for me. And so it's like a little, it's a call to be. It's a little bit of an owner's manual,
Yeah.
right? um, and
Stay
it's
true to yourself. Don't forget.
yeah, and it's a evidence and a reminder of a person's brilliance and vision and desire.
Okay. Well, it's super cool. And it's yeah, it's good to actually have that physical reminder for them, and that way it's not just when they're in the session with you, it's something they can access at any time, right? It's like you just have a resource, something to fall back on. Like, and you can use that as like a kind of a daily meditation to put that into your schedule, right? And make sure that you're staying on track. You can use it like as a North Star.
Exactly. Well said. That's very poetic, very accurate. It is the North Star. It is the North Star. And it's an evolving document. That's part of the reason I call it a living portrait is that, you know, halfway, several sessions down the line, I'll send them the new updated version, right? Which includes the new growth happening in their garden, if you will. And they're free to do whatever they like with it, moving forward. But it's something that they'll always have. And so we all need that. Like I said way back in the beginning of our chat here, we're not meant to read the label on our own bottle. We're not meant to. I used to say, we aren't able to, but having just had the experience of participating in a retreat at the Modern Elder Academy and what I got out of that, the gift that was to me to have reflected back to me, here's what I see as your essence. I got a book title out of it. I have a book proposal, Monty, that is uh 80% there, that emerged out of that experience.
Wow. Okay. So that was an extremely powerful experience.
Yeah,
Do you have an expected publishing date? Is it something, coming 2027? Do you want to plug the book?
I'm going to say 2027. Just so everyone's clear, do I have a publisher? No. Do I have an agent? No. But this is me. This is how I work, right? So okay, here's another great thing for people. One of the things I did, and by the way, the title I'm going to share the working title is Moxie and Eros. And gosh, I cannot recall the subtitle that I landed on, but it has to do with um, there's a there's a desire, an eros deficit in society, right? And by eros, I'm not talking about sexual. I'm talking about life force. That creative life energy that is what generates everything, right? And the Moxie piece, so it's getting in touch with the desire and honoring our desires as calls, right? As signs, as directional help. And then the Moxie piece is about, okay, well, there's the namaste and then there's the seize the day, right? So it's dreaming and doing. Dreaming and doing, we can't just have the insight and say, oh well, got that done. I mean, insights are great, and we need to move. We're living beings, and that's how anything happens, is movement. And it might be a little tiny step, but we need to make that move.
Where are you moving right now? I mean, you have so much going on here with like the book, obviously that's very exciting, and you're reaching your kind of 10-year point for your business. Do you have any like plans for the future? Like, what is your kind of direction at the moment? You're starting to integrate AI into your business, so obviously you're forward thinking. Like,
I'm a
can you
I'm
paint that
a
picture?
I'm a gadget girl, a long time gadget girl. I had a website in 1998. So the Woman's Room, a thinking woman's place in cyberspace, with my buddy Dory Colbert. So
Very cool.
the what was the question again?
Just like, what is your direction now? You
Oh,
know,
where am I moving? Yes.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
So
your business, you, like everything.
yes. So, well, I'm working with Aligned Wealth Management, which is a highly unusual wealth management firm based in the Hudson River Valley in New York. I'm their director of coaching, content, and client experience, and I've created a business model and a coaching architecture where he is doing a fusion of financial advisory and very soulful, deep coaching of the nature that I've been talking about. So that's one incredible project. The book is a very high priority, and speaking. I'm very excited about going out and speaking about some of this to organizations and to conferences and to groups, and sharing some practical wisdom that people can use to be more fulfilled in their lives, but also forward what they're up to in this lifetime, whether it's a solo endeavor or an organization.
Okay, incredible. Well, I'm glad to see that the picture is so expansive and you have, new projects coming from all different angles. And are there any kind of words of wisdom, like as we kind of wind this down, that you would like to leave the guests with? Anything that comes to mind, whether it's business advice or spiritual, you know?
Uh, I'm going to say life is short, be bodacious. A good friend of mine was a hospice nurse for many years. And, we've all heard this, that at the end, when the credits roll on the movie, and we know the credits are rolling, we know that we're at the end of our time in this particular form. Uh, that's when what really matters bubbles up in a big way, and you know people don't regret what they didn't get done, they regret who they didn't get to be, and they regret not spending that time with the people they love, or they regret not giving themselves the permission to live the life that was wanting to get lived through them. And so I have always operated from a certain mortality awareness, which I think is really important. If we think we've got all the time in the world, we'll take our good old sweet time. But
I'm
when
just
you,
going to procrastinate.
yeah, but when you realize, oh, I got a ticket to this life and the show doesn't last forever, so I'm going to enjoy the show all the way to the curtain. And then some. I'm going to bring him back for a curtain call if I can, right?
Yeah.
So when you operate that way, you think, I could be worried about not looking good or trying something and it doesn't work, and I've done that, but I've also tried a lot of things that did work, and so do other people when they throw themselves into things and give themselves permission. And so, it's like, forget what everybody else thinks. Just, they say, do you. Do you. But that involves knowing who you are so that you can do you, right? So
Yeah.
that's what I would encourage people. It's like, you were sent here with some kind of genius that's located here, and it's your job to find whoever you need to help you figure out what that is if you don't know, and to just start playing with it. Find different forms of expressing it in the world, your personal life, your professional life. You're a possibilitarian. The more you get to do that in your personal relationships, at a party, at a work thing, in your business, the happier guy you are going to be.
I love that.
I'm an
Beautiful words of
activator.
wisdom. Yeah.
Yeah, so the more I can be a creative catalyst, the happier I get, and the happier I get, the better at it I get. You see how it works? It's like the more you have the freedom and self-granted permission to be the animal you are, unapologetically, unabashedly, the more unleashed you are.
It's just a self-activating cycle, right?
Self and community is needed. We can't do it ourselves. It's not a solo
Yeah,
sport.
you,
Okay.
you tried it.
I tried it. Yeah, I'm like, you know what? This solo stuff sounds good, but it's not my jam, right? Like, yeah, we're meant to be juiced, reflected by, lifted up by each other. And so even for those of us with loner histories, we can let go of that. We can let go of that and learn how to play with others.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, and that was an amazing podcast. Um, I think that's the longest one we've done yet. I guess this is a good time if you want to, you got the book in, but if you want to plug your website or anything where people
Okay,
can find you.
sure, sure. Yeah, we got to make ourselves findable in life, right?
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
here's where you can find me. I'm at itstimeformoxie.com, because it is time for Moxie in this world. Would you not agree? Would you not agree, Monty? Like,
100%. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
You were
So
bringing it for the last hour and a half. in spades.
So we, leave out the apostrophe sign. ITSTIMEFORMOXIE.com. That's where I am. Reach out. Would love to speak to your group, chat about what's going on with you, point you to a resource, however I can.
Wonderful. Well, I guess that's going to be it for today, guys. Signing off, and thanks for joining us. Ciao, ciao.